Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Um, Let me share my screen over here. So my name is Hussam Abu Al-Shar. I'm a seventh year neurosurgery resident at the University of Pittsburgh. What we're going to be talking about today is about exploring the alternative pathway, or what we call Plan B, for foreign medical graduates. And I prepared just a few slides just as a key points to discuss for this webinar. So, what do I mean by Plan B? So, Plan B is when we are now in the interview season, or just before the interview season started, and I prepared my ERAS application for the majority of people who are applying to residency spots in the United States, and at the same time, I'm taking a precaution. What I mean by that is I'm starting at the same time to prepare for the worst case scenario. If I do not match, what should I do? And that's simply Plan B. So Plan B will encounter multiple options that we will discuss in detail. But in case I do not match, what should I do? And when should I start working on Plan B? And the reason why it's very important to start preparing for Plan B on an alternative route very early is, as we know from the NRMP data, every year it's getting more and more competitive across the board for surgical specialties, for medical specialties, for any training specialty in the United States. There's an influx of more American medical students, and there's more foreign medical graduates that are trying to apply and get into residency spots. So we discussed this. Why do we need to plan for a plan B or an alternative pathway? Because it's getting more and more competitive, and we are facing more challenges in terms of the spots. There are more applicants than the spots. And then we end up not matching. So it's very important to start very early on, because just take this as an example. If you are applying to the match in September and the match result is in March, and let's say you end up not matching in your residency spot. So what's happening right now is you are actually having 6 months of wasted opportunity that you could be working on yourself and advancing yourself while you're going through the match process for that year. In case you do not match, then you are already prepared and took advantage of 6 months for the following year. And that's very important. So a question that I get a lot from people is, when do we start working on Plan B? And the answer is very simple. It's the earlier you start, the better planned you are. So the moment you apply for residency, whether it's September, October, the moment you start, the moment you're starting to work on Plan B. And I want to discuss what I mean by working on your Plan B. So Plan B has different components, and I think the most important component is the first component, having insight. What do I mean by insight? I mean by insight is each one of us, when we applied to our residency application on ERAS, we know what our strengths and what are our weaknesses. We know that we are, for example, we have a great research portfolio, but we are lacking in our clinical skills, or we are lacking in our US clinical experience. So what we need to work on is we need to work on our US clinical experience, and vice versa. I have a great externships or sub-internships in the United States, but I really do not have publications. So having insight is extremely essential. Along the same lines is having insight and realistic expectations about what you're applying. So the beauty about the US match and for each different specialty is that the NRMP data is very it's facts, it's numbers, and numbers do not lie. So just for example, when I applied to residency, The average USMLE Step 1 score, for example, used to be like 245. And again, what I'm emphasizing on is that's the average. So that's 50%. As a foreign medical graduate, you're not trying to be at the 50%. You're not trying to be in the middle of that bell curve. You're trying to be in the plus one, two, or even three standard deviations. So you're trying to be higher in that. So if you passed your step one score is 210, or your USMLE step two score 210, and the average step score is 240 or 245, I'm not saying it's impossible to match in neurosurgery. All I'm saying it's you're making it harder and harder. The more that you are not within that bell curve, you are not in the middle or in the positive standard deviation, you're making it harder for yourself. So having realistic expectations, having a complete understanding of each specialty and what the each specialty needs and actually demands, then you actually will be prepared from the start to apply, and then you will be also prepared for your plan B and what to do in case that does not work. So a lot of times I encounter foreign medical graduates who reach out to me for neurosurgery, and they have many, many, many red flags, whether low step scores, no U.S. clinical experience, no letters of recommendations or connections, and then they tell me, why is it not working for us? And we applied for 2, 3, 4 years because your application is simply not changing, and you have many, many, many red flags that you are not working on improving, or unfortunately it's hard to improve, or you cannot change. No one can change where they graduate from. We're all foreign medical graduates graduate from somewhere else, but we can work on other aspects, whether it's the other aspects what we're discussing here: gaining clinical experience, research. You are in non-traditional roles, whether it's volunteering or others, or advanced degrees, whether you're pursuing a master's degree, MPH, or you're advancing even more to a PhD, which can also increase your chances, especially in more academic-oriented programs. But I think the most important fact for me, at least, is having insight, and that's what I emphasize when I speak to a lot of the foreign medical graduates, is being realistic with yourself of what you're applying to. You cannot be applying to plastic surgery, and you have not had a single publication. You cannot apply to orthopedic surgery, and you do not have U.S. letters of recommendations and connections. So you need to be prepared for these certain specialties, and it's all there. It's all in the NRMP data. So having very good understanding of what each specialty wants will help you. So now, the most common deficiencies that I find for people, when before they apply or when they apply, and we want to work on your plan B. So while you're applying, you applied, you decided to apply. Let's work on some of these deficiencies. So you already submitted your ERAS application. Just remember that, and we're now working between September to March, and maybe even after March in case you do not match. So a lot of people do not have adequate US clinical experience. So once you graduate, not many institutions in the US will allow you to have hands-on experience. So you will rely on observerships. It's not as good as having a hands-on US clinical experience, but it's also sufficient to show that you try to integrate into the system, and you're trying to show that you want to improve your clinical experience. If you get a chance to do externships, that's also helpful. But as I mentioned, the hands-on experience usually is limited. The majority of people that I encounter are actually deficient in the second aspect, which is the research experience. So they tell me, we're finishing our med school right now, or we just finished med school. We took our steps, we scored well, we did a couple of sub-internships or observerships in the US, but we have no research. And usually this is the main factor that slows people down into applying to competitive specialties, for example, neurosurgery, orthopedic surgery, plastic surgery, dermatology, etc. And this is usually what takes people between 2 to 4 years afterwards in order to prepare their application. Because it's multiple factors. So what I like about the research experience, it opens multiple doors for you. So the research experience will allow you to publish in US and international journals, will allow you and generate abstracts for you for US and international conferences to present on. So now you're making your CV bigger and bigger and making your application more appealing for people to review it. In addition to these obvious goals, what is happening is you're actually increasing your exposure to the US system. So you're interacting more and more with your mentors and with residents and fellows. Those are the people that are going to be your connections. And those are the people, especially your attendings and mentors, are going to be the ones who are writing for you letters of recommendations. So can imagine a lot of my friends spend 2, 3, 4 years in the US, and the more time you're spending, the stronger these relationships are built, and you're making it better for your chances to end up in matching in the US system. So the research pathway actually gets you multiple gains that you will attain. And the final point is research actually can get you a green card. So a lot of the people who publish and are excellent in their publications and they get cited and invited and present in national international conferences, but eventually they apply through a lawyer. And this is beyond this talk, but you can actually eventually get a green card and publish and overcome one of the issues of actually matching, which is requiring a visa. So it's a really great thing to do, and I really always emphasize it to people. I want to just take a step back is also having, when I talked about insight, is having insight about how many times do I want to apply and what am I going to change in my application. So the reason I talk about this, I've been in the resident selection and review committee at the University of Pittsburgh for years. And you can imagine in a small field like neurosurgery or plastic surgery, the applicants are very familiar to us. So what I mean by that is if you apply this year and you don't end up matching, the next year you apply, I've already reviewed your application the prior year, and it's a very small field that I will recognize your name and I will recognize your application. So it's very important that you apply. I always tell people apply when you're the strongest possible, and that's very important. So if you don't have a lot of people reach out to me and tell me I don't have financial issues, I want to apply and take my chances. I really try to tell them avoid that practice because it hurts you if you're not ready. You want to apply when you have a full package, and then when you have a full package, but you have a little bit of deficiencies or things that you think you could improve on. These are the things that we want to work on and improve while we are waiting for the match day to see if it's going to happen. Again, the same idea, whether you're going to do also volunteering experience, if you have lacking in your volunteering experience, but you're not trying to make only one thing. So like a lot of people, I review their CV that they sent to me, and I find 3 pages of volunteering, and I was like, what are you trying to do here? You're not basing your life on volunteering. It's good to have balanced things from different domains, clinical, research, volunteering, etc. And as I mentioned to you, building the connections and building the letters of recommendations that you're going to attain. So what are the things that are fixed and what are the things that can be changed? So we discussed, for example, where you graduate from, you cannot change your nationality. You cannot change that, but you can possibly attain a green card and help yourself and your application. Your USMLE step scores. You cannot for sure change the fact that your score is high or low or average. But if, for example, you finished your step one and back in the day when it was a score and you had a low score, you want to show that you took a step two with a higher score, with a high score, and you're building on that. So you can show that, oh, it was just a mistake for one day. It's not my practice. It's not my pattern. It just was, a one day issue that happened to you. We talked about enhancing your CV about you with your publications and building connections and presenting in conferences. Um, and I always get questions also about where should I go? Should I go to a big institution or a small institution? And actually, I don't have the answer to that, and no one does, because you want to study your situation and that institution applicable to you. Do you think you have good relationship there to the program director, to the residents, to the attendings there that can vouch for you and help you? It doesn't matter. You go there, whether it's a big institution or a small institution, and help build your CV more, and you're targeting that. So I want to take a moment here to discuss about different pathways that are there. So I'm going to talk about, now you applied for residency. It's September, and you're going through your experience for application. So what can I do? We already talked about the observerships. We already talked about research. I want to talk one more thing about research before going into the other things. So in research, a lot of people tell me, I am based right now in India, in Pakistan, in Egypt, and I want to do remote research. I go like, okay, that's good. It's a good start for you, but that is not what you want. You want to be in the US. You want to integrate in the system. You want to work with these attendings one on one directly every single day. Watching them, for example, in the OR, observing them, and then in the afternoon, you're doing research. You want to impress them. You want to show them your personality. All of these things are not feasible when you are doing remote research. A lot of people tell me, oh, I'm doing this remote sub-internship. I've never heard of it before. How are you doing a sub-internship without hands-on experience with an attending there? So in life, what I tell these people, in life, there is nothing called just a win-win-win-win-win situation. You need to make sacrifice. You're asking to pursue a very prestigious training in the best country and the best training. So if you're going to do that, you need to make sacrifices. You're going to also sacrifice that I'm going to have to leave. I'm going to have to, you're paying money, you're paying time, you're also sacrificing in order to attain that goal. I've never heard of someone who matched into neurosurgery who has not gone to the US. You need to make these sacrifices. So a lot of people tell me, yeah, well, I started as a teaching assistant in my university and I'm being paid well, so I just want to stay, but I want to apply to neurosurgery. And it does not work. It just, unfortunately, I'm being very realistic with you. It does not work this way. You have to sacrifice, you have to leave that environment, you have to come to the US, integrate yourself, put the time, put the money, put the effort, and it will pay off. It happened to me, it happened to many, many other people. So we talked about the clinical pathway, we talked about the research, and now I want to talk about other things. So the first pathway, which we all know about, is we reach March. On Monday, you are told that unfortunately you did not match. You immediately want to activate SOAP. Unfortunately, SOAP success for foreign medical graduates is very limited, but you still want to try it. Do I know people who matched through SOAP? Yes, I do. And it's possible. You want to adhere to the SOAP rules and regulations. So make sure that you're familiar with that. But you want to participate in SOAP and you try to match. Then after the SOAP, there's the programs that have not filled. They also release a complete list of of these programs that have not filled their positions. So at that time, you activate your connections, you reach out also to these programs, you email them your CV, and you express your interest that you would like to be considered for a position there. Even after that, between March to July, There are a lot of programs that what happens to them is one of two scenarios. Number one, they open new spots or new programs actually expand or get instated between March and July. So you need to be familiar with these programs. You need to just access all of the forums, all of the on Reddit. Sometimes they post on Facebook. They post. You need to be able to be vigilant and see these posts and immediately apply to them. There are also multiple websites like Resident Finder, I think. There are multiple things. And also on the Match Guide, they have a lot of resources. So you immediately know these programs and you immediately contact them and apply to them because you wanna be considered. The other aspect, which is usually around May, June time, unfortunately, some of the people who match either cannot get their visas or certain personal factors play a role and they're not able to start. So you find it in May, June, sometimes even in July, that, oh, there's a vacant position and we need to fill it. And usually the people who fills these positions, the people who are currently in the US. One of the advantages of being in the US and integrated in the system, and especially if you do not need visas or. So these are things that are very, very important. Now, the other aspects that we want to talk about. So what is your plan B that you developed? Do you actually prioritize going to the US or do you prioritize the specialty? What do I mean by that? For me, for example, do I want to become a neurosurgeon anywhere in the world? Or do I want to become a neurosurgeon or any other thing, general surgeon, internal medicine, physician in the US? So you need to have that answer for yourself. If you want to do only neurosurgery and you cannot imagine doing anything other than neurosurgery, then your plan B might be actually studying for the Canadian exams or the UK exams or the German exams and so on. If your plan is to be in the US, then we go back to the insight and having that conversation ahead of time. How many times do I want to apply to neurosurgery? One, two, three times? When am I gonna start applying to other things? Internal medicine, general surgery. What am I gonna participate in SOAP? Usually neurosurgery has no unfilled positions, but I'm gonna send to general surgery or internal medicine. These are conversations, and that's all under the insight factor that you're gonna have before you even start this process. Now, I want to talk about the other aspects that are usually only applicable to the competitive specialties, usually the surgical specialties. So, how can I get into plastic surgery? How can I get into neurosurgery? For example, if I was not able to be accepted through the match. So, one of the pathways, which I can tell you in neurosurgery exists, which is very limited, is called pre-residency clinical fellowship. So what is a pre-residency clinical fellowship? So a pre-residency clinical fellowship allows you to practice neurosurgery as an intern in a university hospital. It's only few programs that offer that. And usually you work for a year or two as an intern, and the people really like you and like working with you. And usually they keep you in that program and sometimes help you in other programs. Who is this really beneficial to? It's beneficial to people who have good research, but unfortunately did not have good clinical US experience and were not able to match. Usually, this is a very, very good pathway. What is the major issue with this pathway? So usually these pathways used to be offered, but now they are restricted only to people who have H-1B visa or a green card. And the reason is very obvious because the J-1 visa is valid for 7 years. And your neurosurgery training residency is 7 years also. So if you are doing 1 or 2 years of pre-residency clinical fellowship, and then you end up matching in neurosurgery starting as a PGY1, by the time you reach your PGY5, if you did 2 years, you already used 7 years of your J1 visa. Are there exceptions? Are there? Yes, there are. But again, you have to remember programs do not want headache. So they are now limiting these to H-1B visa holders and to green card holders or US citizens. So this is one of the, the reasons why you want to consider it. And the other limitation and disadvantage of it is you're spending 1 or 2 years, and these are not ACGME accredited training or pathway. So you're not going to get a certificate saying you spent 2 years as a neurosurgery resident, because it's not. No, this is just a certificate of you spent 2 years of hands-on clinical experience. So that's very, very important. Why do I say this? Because the other pathway is a different pathway that offers you as ACGME training, which is doing a prelim general surgery year. So what do I mean by this? So you want to do neurosurgery, you applied to neurosurgery, but you were not successful. And you're going through the SOAP, or even from before, you applied to neurosurgery, but you apply also to prelim general surgery. The reason behind this pathway, it's a very, very, very hard pathway and requires you to match twice, and also will have issues in terms of securing a spot, because it's very, very limited in terms of finding spots. So if you go to prelim general surgery and you spend a year in prelim general surgery, the next year you want to apply to neurosurgery, you want to get into neurosurgery. The beauty of this pathway is that you can apply to both PGY1 spots and PGY2 spots in neurosurgery. You will get accredited for only 1 year of neurosurgery training. So if you do 2 years of prelim general surgery, you will only get 1 year accredited for neurosurgery. So that's the advantage of the prelim general surgery year. The advantage is you will have opportunities to apply to PGY1 and PGY2 year because you did an ACGME accredited pathway. Unlike the pre-residency clinical fellowship, which is not an ACGME accredited. But you have to also remember, if you're consuming a year from the J1, then your J1 visa, then you're gonna have the same issue if you end up going into first year neurosurgery after you consumed 1 year from prelim general surgery. By the time you reach your PGY 7 year, you consumed all of those 7 years. So these are very important things to keep in mind for that. So these are usually the examples or stories of the pathways that foreign medical graduates get into residency in the US, with special emphasis into competitive specialties such as neurosurgery. So this is everything I wanted to discuss and talk to you about today. I hope that was helpful and useful. You can, go back to the Match Guy, and they have amazing resources and useful, helpful things and strategies to improve the match through one of their advisors. You can have sessions, and it's very helpful actually for success. And I've been fortunate to help and guide people throughout the years, and it's been very rewarding to both me and to the applicants when I hear their success stories, and this is the best news for me. I hope this was useful and helpful to you guys, and I hope to see you in future webinars. All the best to you all.